Hi, do you love Blackwork Embroidery? Do you also love Interlocking Filet Crochet? What if you could combine both of them? This tutorial is going to show you how to read a Blackwork Embroidery chart to create your own Interlocking Filet Crochet project. So be sure to download the tutorial notes. You'll find the links in the description below. Okay, let's get started. So for this tutorial, I have 6 different practice charts, so you can try lots of different styles to practice as much or as little as you want. They have different levels of difficulty. For example, this one has a little more open space. It only has the small diagonals. This one has lots of long diagonals, which often you'll encounter in a Blackwork chart. So that's something that you might want to learn how to do also. There are different kinds of border styles. So some might have a square border around the outside. Some have indented borders or even a space on the side. So there is a lot to choose from. The one that we are going to do is this one right here. It has a few of the long diagonals. It has a square border. I like adding the extra little kind of a picot border on the inside border, so I like using the square border. And this one is practice chart 5, so this is the one we're going to be doing. So the first thing you need to do before you figure out how many windows you need is figure out if your chart needs to have a border added or not. So if this chart, if we did this without a border around the outside, you can see that this section sticks out farther than all the rest. So if the border helps connect the two pieces so that they're joined around the outside edges. So if you had points like this, there'd be a lot of stitches around the outside edge that were loose. So I've added just a square border around the outside edge. And that's because, like I showed you on this one, I like to add this little picot border on the inside. If you don't want to put a border on your contrasting color, then I would suggest doing a border that has an indent, because if it's loose, then it's only loose on the back. When you do the border, it takes care of that, but if you don't do a border, it'd be better to have it loose on the back. Okay, so I have my square border drawn around here. So the first thing we have to figure out is how many main color windows we need. So we need a window for every vertical line on the chart. So it goes from here to here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So 21 across for my whole design. So in order to do 21, get a foundation chain with 21 windows, we need to multiply by 2 and then add 4. So the 2 is the double crochet plus a chain, and then the last one is the end double crochet. So we're going to start out by doing 46 chain. That's 21 times 2 plus 4. Okay, I have my 46 chain. The yarn I'm using is this Migo DK and this Hobby Winter Glow. I think they make a really good combination for doing afghans because they make a lighter weight afghan. So that is what I'm using for this project. So I have my 46 chain. So we're going to double crochet in the 6th chain from the hook. And then chain 1, skip 1 chain, double crochet in the next. So we're going to keep going all the way down. Chain 1, skip 1 chain, and double crochet in the next. So you're going to continue that all the way to the last chain. Okay, I have my 21 windows now, and the part of the chart that is the background is the space between the lines. So that part is, the foundation chain is this down here, and then the top of the row is right here. So now we are gonna do the contrasting color. So contrasting color is always two less, it's one window, so it's two less chain. So we're gonna start out with 44 chain, and then we're gonna mark the 6th chain from the hook. Okay, I have my 44 chain here. I'm gonna mark the 6th chain from the hook. I'm also going to put one in the end so that doesn't come out. So as we look at the chart, this is the foundation chain for the contrasting color, and you can see that it's all bold all the way across. There are no breaks in the line. So for this example, you're going to line up this marked chain. It's going to line up with the 2nd window, and then it's going to lay all the way across the front, and then the last chain will line up with the last window. If you were going to do a border that has an indented corner like this, we would have to start from the wrong side and bring it to the front. We're still going to line up that marked chain with the 2nd window. And then it's going to lay all the way across the front. And in the 2nd to the last window, it's going to go to the wrong side again. And then that last chain will line up with that last window again. Okay, if you have a border like this, where there is an indent, there's a space where that line is not continuous, then you, for that case, so we would start the same thing. We're going to skip that first window, so we're pulling it through with our marked chain lining up with the 2nd window, but it's going to go back to the wrong side in the 10th window. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's going to go to the back in the 10th window, and then it's going to come back up to the right side in the 12th window. I'll have to get that so that it's not twisted. And then at the end, you're going to go to the back again in the 2nd to the last window. So you need to match the graph so that it you have any spaces and it all lines up so that it matches. Okay, so we're going to start back when it just lines up in the front. So get my 6th chain again and line that up with my 2nd window. All right, now we need to look at the chart again. We have our foundation chain across our main color windows. That is this part right here. That's the foundation chain. Now we're going to do the top of row 1, which is this horizontal line right here. So the first stitch right here, this is the inside, it'd be an inside front because it's a bold line. We want that to be on the right side and we're working on the right side currently. So we have an inside front, which is this chain right here. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 back stitches, because you can see the line is thin for these, so we want that vertical line to be on the wrong side, because this is a right side row. Okay, so I'm going to do a double crochet for my mesh stitch in the second window. That is, I'm going to pull it to the back. That's my first back stitch. Chain 1. I'm going to skip a chain, go in the next window, pull it to the back. There's 2, 3. Chain 1, skip a chain, grab the next one. There's 4. 5. 6 and 7. Okay, back to the chart. We have our 7 back stitches. This next one is a back stitch because it has a thin line, but there's also a diagonal that's intersecting with the top here. So since this crosses 2 grid lines, this is a diagonal 2 to the left. So where it's going to go in, so normally we're doing our mesh stitch here. The diagonal is going to go 2 over from that point. So we're going to start with the back stitch. So I have my chain 1, go into my next window and pull that chain to the back. I'll leave the last loop on the hook for my double crochet. The long diagonals are a double treble, so it's 3 yarn overs. So you can see that we did the mesh stitch here, so I have to count 2 over to get to the point where the long diagonal is going to go. So I had to remember to skip my chain of my foundation chain also. So this is the first one. There's skip a chain, that's the first window, and then skip a chain, and then my next window. So we're going to go into that chain, pick up a loop, and go through 2, 3 times. And long diagonals are always on the right side, or all diagonals are always on the right side. So since we're working a right side row, the diagonals are on the front. So I did my first part of the double treble. I'm going to yarn over and complete that stitch. Okay. After the long diagonal here, we have 3 more back stitches. So I did my chain 1 after the mesh stitch. So my last actual mesh stitch was here. So we had to make sure we don't skip one. So we need to go into this window here, pull that chain to the back, do my double crochet. There's 1, chain 1. My next one is going to go in the same window where we did that long diagonal. And then 1 more. Okay, so now we're here. This is a right diagonal that's 2 to the right, combined with the back stitch. So I have my chain 1. I'm going to yarn over 3 times for my long diagonal. So my mesh stitch would normally be going here, so I'm going to count 2 over and pick up that chain. And then I left the last loop on the hook for my long diagonal, and then I'm going to do my back stitch in that next mesh stitch. Okay, I better do my chain 1. Okay, and now we just finished that stitch, so we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more back stitches because it has the thin line. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, and my last stitch is a front stitch because it's a bold line. So that is my inside front, and that is going to go into the last chain of my contrasting color in the front, and then chain 4. And the chain 4 at the end on the main color, that is an outside stitch plus a chain 1. On the contrasting color, it's the inside stitch plus a chain 1. So now we're ready. We've done 2 rows, 1 main color and 1 contrasting color on the right side. Now we're going to turn it over and do the wrong side. Okay, now we're on the wrong side, so we're going to be reading this direction. So we're doing the main color, and the main color is the space between the lines. So we're working, this is the top of the row right here. And you want to look, the first thing we need to decide is where the contrasting color needs to go to prepare for the next row. So since this is a bold line, we want it to stay on the right side. So we're going to put that to the back because we're working on the wrong side now. So this is an outside stitch. These stitches right here are going to be back stitches because it's crossing a light line. And since we're working on the wrong side now, we want these lines to be on the right side. So we're going to do those in the back. So that is 2 back stitches. When we're working across this section, now the horizontal line is a solid bold line. So these are going to have to be in the front because we want to see that bold line on the right side of the work. So we want this top of this row to be seen on the right side. So when we work the stitch to the front, it pushes that to the right side. So if it's a bold line, when we're working on the wrong side, if it's a bold line, we're going to work a front stitch. If it's a thin line, we're going to work a back stitch. And there's also 2 ways to work this row. So the way I have it marked here is doing all mesh stitches. You can also fill in the lines with solid stitches, so you wouldn't see any of the other colors showing through. So this is what I'm going to be doing for this tutorial, is doing the solid stitches. So I have an outside stitch, I have my 2 mesh stitches that are in the back, and I'm going to replace the chain 1 space with a double crochet. That's my solid stitch. So in this case, I'm going to work 3 double crochet in the back. Okay, so my contrasting color is in the back because I have a bold line. And then I'm going, so this is my outside stitch plus the chain 1, which is here. Now I'm going to do 3 double crochet in the back. So the first one goes in the mesh stitch. The next one is the chain one space, and the next one is in the mesh stitch. And chain one, you always chain one after a group like that. So you can see it's filled in that block on the right side. Okay, so now I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 front mesh stitches. So chain one, I'm going to skip my chain one, pull this to the front. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you can see, since we're working on the wrong side, since I did those in the front, you can see that horizontal line on the right side of the design. So, okay, I have my 6 there. The next section is I'm going to do, I can either do 2 front stitches, or I can fill in my chain one space and do 3, I'm sorry, it's a back stitch. Do 2 back stitches or fill in with a solid stitch, and I will do 3 double crochet in the back. And what you need to watch out for, the reason that we have to leave this open is because there are diagonals that will need to meet in that point. We don't need to worry about this one because the stitches are going to go behind the diagonal. And they're all the thin lines, so we can cover those lines. Okay, so I'm going to do my 3 double crochet in the back. What we do want to do is make sure that the diagonal is pushed over to its mesh stitch. So here's our diagonal. We want to pull it that way so we can get to the mesh stitch to work on. So there's the first mesh stitch, and then the solid stitch in the chain one space, and then the next mesh stitch. Okay, so the diagonal, we pushed it out of the way so we could work behind it there. So now we need to chain one and skip that chain one space. We're going to do 3 more double crochet in the back. So there's 1. In this case, we're pulling the diagonal to its mesh stitch over here, so it gets out of the way. Okay, and then we have 6 more front stitches. There's 5 and 6. And now we're over here. So we have, it's a thin horizontal line, so we have 2 back stitches, and then filling in the chain one space with a solid stitch gives us 3 double crochet in the back. So there's 1 in the mesh stitch, 1 in the chain one space, and then another back stitch in the mesh. And then the last stitch is an outside stitch, so our chain 1, we're going to skip 1 chain of the turning chain and double crochet in the next one to do our outside stitch, and then chain 4 and put in your stitch marker. Okay, now we are reading the chart. We're doing the wrong side with the contrasting color. So the first stitch is an inside back because that is a bold line. The next one is a front stitch since it's a thin line. So this is my inside back plus a chain 1. And then I'm going to do a front in that next mesh stitch. And my chain 1. And then another back stitch since this is a bold line. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 front stitches. So the reason that we don't have to worry about the diagonals here is because there's no diagonal that meets with the intersection of these points here. It doesn't meet with the line until the next row. So this row doesn't have any diagonals on it. So we're going to do 15 front stitches. Okay, I will meet you at the end of 15. Okay, I'm at the end of my 15 front stitches. So right here, the next one is a back stitch because that's a bold line, and then a front stitch followed by an inside back as the last stitch. So we're going to do a back, a front, and an inside back. So we're going to skip one chain and double crochet in the next. Okay, chain 4. And then since that we've done a main color and a contrasting color for row 2, now we're ready to turn the work over again. Okay, now we're ready for the third row for the main color. First thing we need to do is decide whether the contrasting color is going to go. So since this is a bold line, we want it to keep going up on the right side, so we want to make sure that stays in front. Okay, now we have an outside stitch. Since this is a thin line, that's a front stitch. And since it's a bold line, those two are going to be back stitches. We have 2 more front stitches, and then we have back stitches so that that horizontal line stays on the right side. And then we don't have any diagonals, those are not till the next row, so we can do front stitches all the way across, and then backs, fronts, backs, a front, and an outside stitch. So that would be if you did mesh stitches. But we are doing solid stitches. So in this case, we have an outside stitch, a front stitch, 2 back stitches. Okay, so this is my outside stitch. I still have my contrasting color to the front, so it stays on the right side. My outside stitch, followed by a front stitch. So that's going to go in that first mesh stitch. Oops, I lost apply there. There we go. And we can't fill in the spaces here because we need that line to stay across, so that you don't want to fill in a solid stitch here. So we have our front stitch. Now I have 2 back stitches so that that horizontal line stays on the right side. So let's go into my next mesh stitch. In this case, since I was working across a solid stitch, so this mesh stitch ended up in the mesh stitch. I have a chain 1, I skipped the solid stitch, and then the next mesh stitch ends up in the mesh stitch. Okay, so 1 more back stitch. Now I have 3 double crochet in the front since it's going across a light line right here. So a double crochet in the mesh, a double crochet in the chain 1 space, and then again in the mesh stitch and chain 1. Now we have a bold horizontal line, so we need to do those 2 in the back. Okay, and we can go all the way across this section because we don't have any diagonals that we need to worry about. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 double crochet in the front. So I got my chain 1, skip my chain 1 space, start in the mesh stitch. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay, now we're here. We have a bold horizontal line, so we have 2 back stitches there. And then we have 3 double crochet in the front since it's crossing over a thin line. So in the mesh stitch, in the chain 1 space, and in the mesh stitch, and chain 1. Okay, another bold line, so those are back stitches. And then I have a front stitch by itself and then the outside stitch. So there is my front stitch and my outside stitch. And chain 4. Okay, now we're ready for row 3 of the contrasting color. We're still on the right side, so we're reading right to left. So this is my inside front, so that's why we left that on the right side. Then I have 3 more bold lines, so I'm going to do 3 mesh stitch in the front. Okay, so there is my inside front. Then I'm going to do 3 front stitches. Okay, next, after my last front stitch, I have a back combined with a left stitch. I have 2 of those. So yarn over, start my double crochet, but leave the last loop on the hook. And then regular diagonal is only 2 yarn overs, one that only crosses 1 grid. So that one is, this is where the mesh stitch normally goes, so we're going to go into the next mesh stitch here. And then I'm going to go through 2 and then close that stitch. So I'm going to do 1 more, chain 1, do a yarn over for my back stitch. That one is going to go, I finished this mesh stitch, so now I'm doing this mesh stitch right here. So it's in the same space that I finished the diagonal in. So I'm going to pull that to the back, pull up a loop, and then yarn over twice for the diagonal. And normally I would be going in here, so now I'm going one to the left, which is right there. And since I'm working on the front, the diagonals are on the front or the right side. Okay, now I have, these are thin lines, so I have 3 back stitches. Here's 1, 2, and 3. Okay, now I have a back stitch combined with a vertical left stitch. So this is the back stitch, and then the vertical left is the double treble, which is 3 yarn overs. So I'm going to start with my back stitch, which is my double crochet, leave the last loop on the hook. Now 3 yarn overs for my diagonal, and normally I would be putting the hook here to pick up a stitch, so I'm going to go down 1 and over 1, so that crosses 2 grids. So we have 1, 2, and then over 1. So then we need to just grab the top of that stitch from before. Go through 2, 3 times, and then finish the stitch and chain 1. Okay, now we have another back stitch. So my mesh stitch was here, so the next one's going to be there. And chain 1. Then I have a vertical right diagonal combined with a back stitch. So 3 yarn overs. So normally my mesh stitch would be going here, so there's down 1 more and over 1, so we're back in that same spot. There's the diagonal, and the mesh stitch was here, so now I gotta go here. Then I have 3 more back stitches. And then I have a right combined with the back, 2 of those. So 2 yarn overs for the short diagonal. So normally I would be putting my mesh stitch here, so it's 1 to the right. Go do through 2 loops twice, and then yarn over it and do my back stitch. And chain 1. So I have 1 more, yarn over twice. So now I would be going here and then there. And then the back stitch attached. Then I have 3 front stitches. And an outside stitch. Or that is my inside front, I'm sorry. And then chain 4. those are both my right side rows. So now we're ready to turn it over and do the wrong side row for row 4. Okay, so let's mark up the chart for row 4, and that is a wrong side row. So we are working from left to right. So we are right here. So first we have an outside stitch, and we have a back stitch since this is a thin line, another back stitch, a front stitch since that's a bold line, another back stitch, another back stitch. Here we have 4 back stitches if you are doing all mesh stitches, but we're doing solid, so we're going to fill in the spaces, so that's a total of 7 double crochet in the back. Then we have 2 back stitches with 1 filled in is 3 double crochet in the back. Another 4 with the middle 3 filled in, that's 7 double crochet in the back. Another back stitch, another back stitch, a front since that's a bold line, a back stitch, and an outside stitch. Okay, so the first one I have is my outside stitch here, and then 2 backs. And since this is a bold line, we want that design to continue up on the right side, so we want to keep that in the back. So I have my outside stitch and my first back. Oops, I didn't do my yarn over. And the second back stitch. Then we have a front. And 2 backs. And notice this one is by a diagonal, so we want to make sure that diagonal is pushed over towards its mesh stitch so that you don't end up with it in the wrong window. Okay, now we have 7 double crochet in the back, and there's another diagonal, so push it towards its mesh stitch. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay, and chain 1. So now we have 3, and those are between diagonal stitches, so we have to make sure they're each pushed towards their diagonal. So this one's going to go this way. There's 1, 2, and this one has to go that way. And chain 1. 7 more double crochet in the back. And 1 more. I'm going to move that diagonal over to its mesh stitch. Okay, then we have 2 individual back stitches. It's another diagonal I've got to get out of the way. A front and then 2 backs. and an outside stitch, and chain 4. And it's always good to check to make sure that you didn't end up with any diagonals in the wrong place, so turn it over and give it a quick look over. So now we can do the contrasting color for row 4. So we're still going this way, but now we're working on this line. So we have a back stitch because we want that solid line to be on the right side, another back stitch, a front, another back, 2 fronts. There's 4 fronts. Now this one is attached to 2 diagonals. So it's a right diagonal, a front, and a left diagonal. Then we have 4 more front stitches, 2 backs, 2 fronts, a back, and an inside back. Okay, so there's my first inside back. I have 1 more back stitch. Two fronts. Two backs. Then I have 4 fronts. Okay, and then I have the diagonal right with a front and a diagonal left. So the diagonal across one grid is 2 yarn overs. Normally, I would be going into this spot right here, but since I'm going to the right, I'm going into this spot right here, my 2 yarn overs. And since I'm on the wrong side, I want to go through the back because I want my diagonals to be on the right side. Okay, leave the last loop on the hook. Now I'm going to start with my front stitch, 2 yarn overs for the left. So that one, this is my mesh stitch, so it's 1 to the left. And then close that stitch. And my chain 1. Okay, now I have 4 more front stitches. So this is where my mesh stitch last one was, so now I'm here. Okay, now I have 2 back stitches. Two front stitches, and a back and an inside back. There's the back and an inside back. And my chain 4. So we've done 2 rows on the wrong side, so now we can turn it over and work on row 5. So now we are going to be going this way. So we have an outside stitch, a front, because that's a thin line, another front, another front. Since there's nothing that connects here, we can fill that in, so that's 3 double crochet in the front. There's a back stitch, okay, a front stitch, then we have 3 fronts, and I can fill in the one between, so that's 5 double crochet in the front, a back, a front, another front, a back. There's 3 fronts that I can fill in, so that's 5 double crochet in front, another front, a back, 2 fronts, and then filled in makes 3 double crochet in front, another front, and an outside stitch. And this line is still going up on the right side, so we want to make sure that stays in front there. Okay, so we have a front, three double crochet in the front, then we have a back followed by a front, then we have 5 double crochet in front, that's there. Then we have a back, 2 fronts, and a back. Okay, there's my back. I want to make sure I'm not working over that diagonal, so get it pushed over to its mesh stitch. And then this one has to go that way. And back. Now I have 5 double crochet in the back, I'm sorry, in the front. Then we have a front and a back. Three double crochet in the front. A front and then an outside stitch. And chain 4. Okay, now for the contrasting color for row 5, we are on this line, so we are going to go this way. So I have an inside front, a back combined with a left, back, back, front, back, a back combined with a left, back, back, a right with a back and a left, back, back, a right back, back, front, back, back, a right back, a front, and an inside front. Okay, so there's my inside front. I have one more front. A back with a diagonal right. So there's the beginning of my back, 2 yarn overs, and pick up that next mesh stitch. Okay, then we have 2 backs followed by a front. So my mesh stitch ended here, so it's going to go in the same one as that diagonal. So there's a back, and a front. Then I have a back, and then a back with a left. So there's my back. Then I have, there's the double crochet for my back, and then 2 yarn overs for my left. And complete the stitch. 2 more backs. So now this was my mesh stitch here, so it goes in this one. There's 1, 2. Okay, now this one has the 3 parts, so it's a right, back, and a left. So 2 yarn overs for the right, and then a back, and then 2 yarn overs for the right. Now I have 2 more backs. So since this is my mesh stitch, it goes in this one to start. So there's 1 and 2. Then we have a right combined with the back. So my next mesh stitch would be here, so the right is back where I just finished. Okay, and then a back followed by a front. Two more backs. A right with the back. So that's my next mesh stitch would be here, so right is the one I just finished in. So there's my right back, and then I have a front and an inside front. And and a chain 4. Okay, so that gives you an idea how to mark them up. Let's meet back here when I need to show you about a diagonal meeting at the border right here. So I will meet you back at this point. Okay, we're ready for this row here. The last row we did was a right side row, so now we're going to be going from the wrong side here. So we have an outside stitch, we have 3 front stitches, and then you can fill those in to make 5, I'm sorry, those are back stitches. So 5 double crochet in the back, another back, we get 3 double crochet in the back, another 3 in the back, another 3 in the back, another 3 in the back, because these are all crossing a thin line. So another 3 in the back, and another 3 in the back. Then a back stitch, and 5 double crochet in the back, and an outside stitch. Okay, so since our bold line is continuing up, we want to make sure that the contrasting color stays on the right side, so that goes to the back. Okay, there's my outside stitch. I have 5 double crochet in back. Okay, and then I have another back stitch, and then there are 6 sets of 3 double crochet in the back. Need to move that diagonal over to its mesh stitch so it doesn't get in the way. There's 3 of them. We got 3 more sets. And 1 more set of 3. So it needs to have that diagonal moved over to its mesh stitch. Okay. Then we have another front stitch and then 5 double crochet in the back. Here's my front. I'm sorry, a back. That was a back stitch. Here's my 5 double crochet in the back, and an outside stitch, and chain 4. Okay, now for the contrasting color, we're still reading that way. We have an inside back connected to a vertical left diagonal. We have a front with a diagonal 2 to the left, 2 fronts, a right with a front, another right with a front, 4 fronts, and then this one has a lot connected to it. So this one right here has a right that's a diagonal that's 2 to the right, another long diagonal that's vertical right, then a back stitch, another long diagonal that is a vertical left, and a long diagonal that is 2 to the left. 4 more front stitches, a front to the left, a front with a left, 2 more fronts, and then a diagonal that's 2 to the right with a front, and then a vertical right diagonal connected to the inside back. Okay, so the first stitch is our inside back with the vertical left diagonal, and normally we have a double crochet with a chain 1. That's what our turning chain 4 creates, but now since we're going to add a diagonal to it, we don't need as many chains, so we're going to take away 2 chain and start with just 2 chain. Okay, so I have 2 chain. That's the beginning of my double crochet. I'm going to do 3 yarn overs for my long diagonal, and so my diagonal or my mesh stitch normally is worked here, so I'm going to go down 1 more and then over to the left. So I have, this is where the mesh stitch is, so down 1 more and over to the left. So I want to work into that same stitch to the rows below there. Sometimes you got to move the stitches over to get into those top stitches. Okay. Then I have a front stitch combined with a long left diagonal, or 2 to the left. So this was my inside front, so now my next mesh stitch is here. So I'm going to do my front, then 3 yarn overs, and the diagonal is 2 to the left. So this is my mesh stitch, so 2 to the left is here. We have 2 more front stitches, and I want to make sure I don't skip a mesh stitch, so this was my last one. The next one goes here. And then I have a right with the front. So that is just a 1 grid diagonal, so 2 yarn overs. And combined with the front stitch. Then I need another right with the front, so 2 yarn overs. And I have 4 front stitches. Okay, now we're to this center one that has 5 parts connected to it. So first one is 2 to the left. So my mesh stitch is going to go here, so I'm going to go 2 to the left. And leave that last loop on the hook. So now I'm going to go a vertical left. So my 3 yarn overs, the vertical left, this is the stitch I would work into for the mesh stitch, so down 1 and over to the left. Now I'm going to do my back stitch. That is the mesh stitch for the group. Now I'm going to do a vertical right. So 3 yarn overs, and here's my mesh stitch, the stitch I worked into, so down 1 more and over to the right. Oops, I only got 2 yarn overs. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now 3 yarn overs, and then I'm going to do the diagonal that's 2 to the left. So my mesh stitch is here, so 2 to the left is here. And close the stitch. Okay, now we have 4 more front stitches. So the mesh stitch for the group is worked right here, so the next one is right here. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, then we have a front combined with a left. Another front combined with a left. That's those 2. Now I have 2 more fronts. And then I have a long vertical that's 2 to the right with a front. So 3 yarn overs. My mesh stitch is going to be worked here, so 2 more over to the left. And that is combined with the front stitch. And my chain 1. And the last one is the vertical right. I'm sorry, I was calling that a left stitch. That was a right with a front. Now I have a vertical right with the inside back. So 3 yarn overs. The inside back will go here, so I'm going to go down 1 more and over to the right. And then my inside back. And my chain 4. Okay, now we are ready for the right side row. So we're on this row. There's an outside stitch, a front stitch, 5 double crochet in the front since that's a thin line, another front stitch, we have 10 back stitches, a front stitch, 5 double crochet in the front, another front stitch, and an outside stitch. And since we want to keep this line, bold line, going on the right side, we want to make sure that stays on the right side. So we're going to put our contrasting color to the front. Okay, there's my outside stitch. I have a front stitch. Make sure I get in that first mesh stitch. Then the 5 double crochet in the front need to go between these 2 diagonals here, so we want to make sure that we push them the diagonal towards its attached mesh stitch. Okay, there's 5. Then I have a front stitch. That one needs to go, we need to push that diagonal out of the way. Then we have our 10 back stitches. There's my 5th one. I got 5 more. Okay, then we're here, so we have a front stitch and then 5 double crochet in the front. So get that diagonal over to its mesh stitch. And then the 5 go between these 2 diagonals, so push that one over. Okay, we have one more front stitch and an outside stitch. So there's the front stitch and the outside stitch. And chain 4. Okay, now we're ready for the wrong side row. So we're still on the right side, I'm sorry, the contrasting color, so we're still on the right side, we're going this way. So we have an inside front. The diagonal is not till the next row, so we have a back, a back, a back that's connected to a diagonal 2 to the right and a left, a back that's attached to a left, 3 backs, a back with a diagonal 2 to the left, another back, a front, a back, a diagonal that's 2 to the right with a back, 3 more backs, a right diagonal with a back, a right diagonal with a back and a diagonal 2 to the left, 2 more backs, and an inside front. Okay, so we have 2 backs. Then we have a long diagonal that's 2 to the right with a back and a left. So 3 yarn overs for the long diagonal. The mesh stitch would normally go here, so 2 to the left is here. Okay, then the back stitch. And then 2 yarn overs for the left. And close the stitch. Then we have a back combined with the left. So this was my last mesh stitch, so the next one goes here. Okay, 3 backs. And then we have a back combined with a long 2 to the left. So there's my back. 3 yarn overs, and 2 to the left is here. So there's 1, 2, and that's into that same, that stitch that had all of the different diagonals attached to it from before. Okay, now I have a back. Since my last mesh stitch was here, the next one needs to go there. Then I have a front, another back. There's a front and a back. This one is a long diagonal, so it's 2 to the right with a back. It's going into that same center stitch. And this part of the diagonals isn't to the following row, so that's why we're only doing these right now. So 3 more backs. Then a right back, 2 yarn overs for the right, combined with a back, and then a right with the back and 2 to the long 2 to the left. So there's the right, the back, and 2 to the left. And close the stitch. Now we have 2 more backs and an inside front. So my mesh stitch was here, so the next one goes there. There's my 2 backs, and now my inside front. And since that one was the where we connected a diagonal. Instead of counting over, skipping a chain, you're working into the top of that diagonal. And chain 4. Okay, so let's do another row to complete those long diagonals. So now we're on the wrong side. We're working on this row. We have an outside stitch. We have 5 double crochet in the back because that's a thin line. Another double crochet in the back. 3 in the back. Another 3 in the back. Another 3 in the back. Another 3 in the back. So there's a total of 6 sets of 3 double crochet in the back. Then another back stitch, 5 double crochet in the back, and an outside stitch. And since we still want that bold line is right here, we want to make sure that that contrasting color stays in the back so it's on the right side. So that's this part right here. So here is my outside stitch. Have 5 double crochet in the back. Okay, one more. Yep, make sure that diagonal is out of the way. Another double crochet in the back, and that diagonal needs to go this way. And then we have our 6 sets of 3 double crochet in the back. So get that diagonal this direction. Okay, there is 1 set. Two sets. Okay, this one needs to go on that side of the diagonal. Make sure it's pulled towards its mesh stitch. That's the 3rd set. The next one needs to go, we need to have that mesh diagonal pulled this way. There's 4 sets. And there's my last, this will be my 6th set. Okay, now we have 1 back stitch. Get that diagonal out of the way. And then 5 double crochet in the back. So this diagonal goes this way. And then my last one is my outside stitch. Okay, let's double check to make sure all of the diagonals are looking correct. Okay, now for the contrasting color row, we have an inside back, we have a vertical right with the front, 2 more fronts, a back, a front with the left, a front, a right front, back, a front with a vertical left, back, a vertical right with a front, a back, a front with a left, a front, a right front, back, 2 more fronts, and then a front with a vertical left, and the inside back. Okay, so here's my inside front. Then I have a vertical it's a vertical right with a front. So here is my inside back. I'm gonna do 3 yarn overs for my vertical right stitch. So my mesh stitch will be going here. So I'm gonna go down another and over to the right. So it's gonna go into the top of that stitch. And that is combined with the front stitch. So my front stitch is going right here. And close that stitch. Chain 1. Then I have 2 more front stitches. A back, a front with a left that's just 1 grid. So here's my front, and then 2 yarn overs for the left. Then another front stitch. And a right front. And we have a back. And then we have a front with a vertical left. So there's the front. The vertical left is a long one, so 3 yarn overs. So vertical, we're going to go from the mesh stitch down 1 more and over to the left. And that is going to end up, we're back in that same center stitch. And we actually want this one to go between, we want it to be between these stitches here. So we want to make sure we get it into the right part. Okay, then we have a back stitch. And then we have a vertical right with the front. So 3 yarn overs. So my mesh stitch will go here. So down 1 more and over to the right. So it's still into that same spot, but we want to get it between these 2 stitches. And that's combined with the front stitch. So we're getting everything so that it's lined up correctly. Okay, so now we just did this one. Now we're going to do a back. front with a left, a front, a right front, and a back, two more fronts, and then we have a front combined with a vertical left. So there's my front, 3 yarn overs for the left. So I worked my mesh stitch here, so down one more and over to the left is into that stitch down there where we did that, the top of that diagonal. So it matched up with this diagonal here. And then we had to do our inside back. And chain 4. Okay, so that shows you how to get started on a project, how to do the diagonals, both ones that cross one grid and cross 2 grids, how to do the solid stitches if you want to fill in the background, and how to mark up the chart so that you can figure out what stitches to use. So I will meet you back at the point where we're going to do our last main color row. So I will meet you then. Hey, I've done my last contrasting color row and I fastened off and we wove in all my extra ends. So now I'm ready to do this last main color row. So ours is ending up on the right side. So this would be an outside stitch, 20 back stitches, and an outside stitch. If this was a wrong side row, it would be a back or outside stitch, 20 front stitches, and then an outside stitch. So this is my outside stitch. And I'm going to do back stitches all the way across. So I will meet you at the end of this row. Okay, I'm at the end of the row. You could just fasten this off if you want to, but if you like, there's also a couple of borders that I can show you. So we're going to work in the windows around the outside edge of the main color. So since this is a right side row, we're going to begin working down the windows on this side. So I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to work 2 single crochet in each window all the way down the side. So continue all the way down, doing 2 single crochet in each window until you get to the corner. Okay, at the corner, we're going to do 2 single crochet, chain 1, and then 2 single crochet. And then continue all along the next side, doing 2 single crochet in each window. So you're going to continue all the way around doing 2 single crochet in each side window, and then in each corner window you're going to do 2 single crochet, a chain 1, and 2 single crochet. So I'll meet you at the end of the row or the round. Okay, I'm back around to where I started, and I worked 2 single crochets in each window. The corner window, we already have 2 single crochet to start with, so I'm going to add the other 2 and chain 1 and join in the beginning single crochet. Okay, the first border I'm going to show you only works if there are an odd number of windows on all 4 sides. So we're going to start out, we're going to chain 1, we're going to single crochet together over the same single stitch and the next stitch right here. So pick up a loop in both those stitches and yarn over and pull through. Then we're going to do a half double crochet and a double crochet in the next stitch, chain 2, then we're going to single crochet through the top of that double crochet. So we're going through those 2 loops right there. And then we're going to double crochet and half double crochet in the next stitch. And then single crochet 2 together over the next 2 single crochet. So we're going to keep doing that. Half double crochet and double crochet in the same stitch, chain 2, and single crochet through the top of the double crochet. Then double crochet and half double crochet in the same next stitch, and then single crochet 2 together over the next 2. So a half and a double in the next one, chain 2, single crochet through the top, a double and a half in the next one, and then single crochet 2 together. So you're going to keep repeating that all the way down to the corner. Okay, I'm at the corner, or almost to the corner, so I'm going to do my half double and my double, chain 2, single crochet through the top, and then my double and my half. So I'm going to single crochet 2 together in those first 2 single crochet of the corner. Okay, now I'm going to work in that chain 1 space. Okay, so in the chain 1 space, I'm going to do a half double crochet, a double crochet, chain 2, single crochet through the top, a double crochet, and a half double crochet, all in that chain 1 space, and then single crochet 2 together over those next 2, and this one gets kind of hidden, so make sure you find that stitch there. So you're going to continue all the way around in the same manner, and then you will finish that same corner in this chain 1 space before you join. Okay, the second border I'm going to show you will work no matter how many windows you have on each side. So it is going to start with the same round where you do 2 single crochet in every window. So now I'm going to show you the second round. So we're going to chain 2 and then double crochet in the next double single crochet. So that's going to create our first double crochet 2 together. So we chain 1. Now we're going to double crochet 2 together over the next 2 single crochet. And chain 1. So we're going to keep going around and doing a double crochet 2 together over the next 2 single crochet. And chain 1. Okay, so keep going all the way along the side and I will meet you at the corner. Okay, I've got to the end of my side and now in the corner in the chain 1 space, we're going to work a double crochet 2 together and a chain 1 3 times in that chain 1 space. So there's 1, 2, 3. And then continue on the next side. Make sure you don't miss this single crochet that gets kind of covered over. So you're going to continue along doing a double crochet 2 together over 2 single crochet, and then a chain 1 all the way down the side. And then in the corner, you're going to do a double crochet 2 together plus a chain 1 3 times, all in the chain 1 space. And I will meet you at the end of this round. Okay, I finished the 3 double crochet 2 together in the last corner, and I'm going to join in the first double crochet 2 together, which is that first double crochet. Okay, now for the third round, chain 1, single crochet in the chain 1 space, chain 2, then you're going to single crochet in the center of that single crochet you just made. Okay, single crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 2, go through the center of that single crochet and do another single crochet. So we're making picots all the way around. So single crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 2, insert your hook through the center of that single crochet, and then work a single crochet. So you're going to keep doing that same thing all the way around in every chain 1 space. Okay, and then once you go all the way around, I will show you how to do the border around the contrasting color. Okay, if you want to add a decorative border around the contrasting color, you need to be on the right side. I'm going to start with a slip knot on my hook, and you're going to start in any corner. So I'm going to join with a single crochet. So with my slip knot on the hook, I'm just going to pull up a loop and pull it through. Then we're going to chain 2, single crochet, and slip stitch in that same corner. So then as you're working around, you're going to chain 2 and then slip stitch in the next window. Chain 2, slip stitch in the next window. So you're going to continue all the way down the side, doing chain 2 and then slip stitch in the next window. Okay, I will meet you at the corner. Okay, I slip stitched in that last window before the corner, so now I'm going to chain 2, slip stitch in the corner, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and slip stitch. Oops. Okay, that's the corner. So now I'm going to continue around again, doing a chain 2 and a slip stitch. So you're going to do that all the way around. Chain 2 and a slip stitch in the window. In the corners, you're going to do a slip stitch, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and a slip stitch. So I will meet you back at the end. Okay, I'm back at the starting corner. I did a slip stitch in my last window. I'm going to chain 2, and then since this corner we started with a single crochet, we just need to do the slip stitch and then join in that beginning single crochet and fasten off. Okay, well now we're finished with this project. There's 6 practice charts in the tutorial, so have lots of fun with practicing all the different stitches. Once you get the hang of it, there are so many amazing Blackwork embroidery charts that you can purchase. I hope you enjoy being creative. Happy crocheting!